Good afternoon, everyone. It's Anifa Menon from hearthealthbrainhealth.com, encouraging healthy grieving and mindful actions. Today, my contemplative time this morning has been all about true forgiveness and true compassion. And a lot of us feel that we have true compassion, and often that leads to true forgiveness in situations where we feel like we've been hurt by something. And so I found a couple of quotes or a few quotes that I wanted to share with you and get you to think about these ideas just a little bit today. The first one is by Albert Einstein, and it says, "Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty." So again, our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. Now, we would think that if we think of nature, we think, wow, of course, I love all of nature, right? Now, some people will say, well, I love this weather, but I don't love this weather, or I love this place to live, I don't love this place to live because I like being by the water, I like being by let's say greenery, right? So maybe I like the jungle sort of idea, another person likes the beach. So all of these sorts of things that we start realizing that I love nature for sure and I'm embracing it all. Do I embrace it with the same compassion? And it's still easy to think, or easier to think about nature in general, because we're very forgiving with nature, right? So we might love the beach and we go one day and it's really windy and it's really cool and we expected it to be hot and sunny, but we're very forgiving, right? Because we just think that's nature, right? That I can't predict how it will be, even though many times it's exactly how I like it to be. Now let's put it towards people. The same idea of freeing ourselves by widening our circle of compassion. And I talk about these things about we might be very compassionate towards our own family, for example, and our own family means the world to us. When we widen that circle, now there's in-laws, and then there's other influences, there's friendships, there's whatever that expands our circle. Now, do we feel the same compassion towards others that are beyond our immediate circle? Because this is that true widening experience of compassion. Now we come back to nature and let's think about this forgiveness and compassion. We can think that every year, at least in Ontario, and I'm sure other places too, there can be these heavy storms, right? And heavy winds and very strong gusts of wind. And let's say I've got a tree on my front lawn, and one day in that gust of wind during a storm, the tree falls over and really damages my home. Now, this happens to homes across Ontario quite regularly, and like I said, probably happens in other countries too, and it could be other types of storms, right? It could be hurricanes, it could be floods, it could be so many different things. And of course, we see it as nature. And when we're seeing this experience, aren't we compassionate towards our home, for one thing, but towards the tree too, right? Don't we feel like, oh my goodness, this tree had been growing for 30 years on my home property and now it's no longer alive, right? Or it has broken or it has to start all over again. So we're compassionate that way. When we think about the home, we are not suddenly upset with the tree, right? Because we see this, as we call it, an act of God or a natural disaster, and we deal with it, right? So we've got this forgiving space, even though we might not be happy about the situation and the extra expense that we might have to spend to then maintain or redo our homes, right? So this is our experience with nature and even damage that it causes us personally. Now, what do we do when we are affected by a person, even someone from our closest circle, and this person has hurt us, and we're feeling that hurt, that this person was, I might say, just being themselves, or I might say, wow, I never knew that they were like that. And suddenly I'm feeling the pain of that damage that has happened through a conversation, an argument, an experience, anything. And this is another space of that circle of compassion. Can I look at that person kind of like the house that of no doing of their own they've been affected by something which has then affected them, right? So I can be very forgiving in my home because I feel like something just happened to them which made this house fall, right? Or break, or whichever damage that happened to it. People have this experience from other people too. And our entire lives are affected by so many people and so many experiences and so many things. And we know our own, but we don't fully know anyone else's. And this is often what people forget about, especially when people are part of our close circle. So it could be family or friends, but we think we understand what they've gone through because we've seen it or they've shared most things with us, we feel. But you know yourself that you will share some things and not other things with even the closest people to you. So this also extends our compassion that without knowing what might have affected another person, they've done something from a space of pain that has created some pain in me. Then to be compassionate and forgiving is a much bigger space to come from. And it's a beautiful energy to be able to share with yourself and everyone else, because don't forget that when we think this way, we affect our own system first, our own energy first, and then we affect the people around us. So this compassion and forgiveness can be far reaching. So, of course, I came across the next quote by Buddha, and this quotation said, "Have compassion for all beings, rich and poor alike. Each has their sufferings." Now, when we look at rich and poor, and we can say that in the world, and I'll say for as long as I have seen or known or even read about, there's always been this difference between the rich and the poor. And I don't know which side you might be on, but you might notice that you have perhaps some judgment and less compassion for the side that's not yours. So let's say if there's someone really rich and you're not feeling very rich, have you ever felt taken advantage of? Have you ever felt like someone was even more clever than you, more calculating than you, more resourceful than you, and in some way what their actions were have hurt you? And this often, again, differentiates people, right? So when I look for differences, I'm not very wealthy and someone else is very wealthy. And I've certainly gone through experiences where I felt these things that, wow, someone was in such a good situation and they chose not to help me in that time. But I do not know their situation. I do not know anyone, rich or poor, comfortable or not comfortable. What it looks like on the outside is never exactly what's happening to an individual. And today, I really feel that compassion. And I recognize that I don't know. And perhaps you'll recognize today that you don't know what's happening for someone else. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, well, if I was rich, then I wouldn't do that. But you are not living that person's life experience, and you don't know what has led to that person getting to a place of richness, for example. It could be even rich in family togetherness or closeness or love that you're perceiving, not necessarily that person's experience. And this is such an important space for us to get hold of our own ego minds, which feels like I know what's happening for someone else. Well, many people don't even know what's happening for themselves or why they do, what they've been affected by that then shapes their thinking, their behavior, and their experience. So today I'd love for you to think about that for just 5 minutes to see what kind of things have affected you and what kind of biases might you have that might be limiting the compassion or the forgiveness that you share with others. And finally, I would love to end with this quotation, which is by Bell Hooks. And it says, and I think this draws it all together: "For me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed?" So I'll read that again. For me, forgiveness and compassion are always linked. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? And this is a big concept, right? So if we try to put this together, if we understand this, when someone has truly done something that's not right, how do I make sure that I hold someone accountable for it, yet really trust and believe in their ability to be transformed. Because most people, after they've been hurt by someone, they'll say that person will never change. They've always been that way. They're always going to be that way. And never mind that I'm looking at them from my judgmental eyes of I've been hurt and they're hurting hurtful people. That's what they do. People take advantage. When people are in this situation, they'll take advantage. So I can either relate it to the situation, I can relate it to the person. And most often people relate it to a person. Now a behavior can be not right. And we can try to correct a behavior. We can tell a person, we can say it kindly, not with the I knew you'd do this again energy, but the do you know why you did this? Or it really didn't feel good that you did this, right? So all of this sort of idea. I hope that you don't do this again. How we would speak to a child, right? That it's with compassion, with love, with forgiveness, with understanding, which oftentimes we don't do in adulthood. And this is a strength to regain. This is soul power energy. And if you focus on these ideas and transform your own mind, you'll notice that you'll have the capacity to help other minds transform too. I wish that for you today. I wish you a fabulous day ahead, and I hope you remember transform your mind and transform your life. Have a great day, everyone.